back to another episode of Mastering the Monado. Today we're going to be covering all the tourney legal stages, which includes everything you need to know about them. I'll be covering the pros and the cons of each stage to help you decide the right counter pick, depending on certain situations. If you haven't seen the first two episodes, I highly recommend doing so by clicking on the links down below. Also, thank you guys for so much support with this series. You guys are awesome. Let's see if we can reach 60 likes for this part. And now, let's get right into the next part of this guide. Battlefield is a pretty decent stage for Shulk. The platforms allow Shulk to land easier, and up tilts are a great tool to cover opponents above you on top of the platforms. Killing Shulk on Battlefield can be fairly difficult because of the large blast zones, plus shield mode allows him to live even longer. He can also utilize a large space to camp when in jump mode. The only disadvantage I could possibly see for Shulk is that Mal can be a little bit more inconsistent because of the platforms can kind of be in your way in certain scenarios. Also, if your opponent gets a lot off of platforms like Mario or ZSS, I really wouldn't recommend choosing this stage. Overall, it's pretty good for surviving longer and playing defensive, but it can make certain Shulk tech a little bit more difficult. Also, on a side note, I'm not really going to cover Dreamland because it's pretty much the same thing except for smaller blast zones. So really, it's just going to be easier to get earlier kills. That's pretty much it. In my opinion, Smashville is a very neutral stage for Shulk. The moving platform helps him get earlier kills towards the blast zones, and it doesn't provide any type of distraction towards him. He can also go under the stage in jump mode if you want to mix up your get up options. And overall, it's a pretty neutral stage, and there's nothing really wrong, but there's nothing really that makes him super overpowered on that stage. Basically, I would recommend counterpicking it unless you're fighting a Sheik. Then I definitely wouldn't counterpick it. That's pretty much the only situation. Town and City is personally one of my favorite stages. The low ceiling helps him get earlier kills with the Monado Purge, and the smaller blast zones to let him take advantage of his great edgeguarding moves. Plus, the stage itself is wider than most other stages, so you can easily camp and jump until you have access to shield, or if you decide to time them out and be a jerk. You can also use up tilt to cover the platforms. They're like in a really good spot for him. Overall, it's a really good stage for Shulk, and it's usually the stage I would counterpick. So the tilts of Lylat Cruise let you slide when landing and jump, making it really difficult for your opponents to punish your landings. It also has a favorable platform layout, along with side edges that are close to the blast zones, making carry-off kills even easier. The ceiling isn't too low, with low platforms, which helps in certain matchups. The ledge doesn't really mess the Shulk's recovery as hard as it does with other characters, because his uppy is 2 hits, so if you're kind of like getting stuck under the stage, you can kind of readjust yourself and hit uppy again, to make sure your air slash doesn't screw you over. Shulk can also shark under the stage easily with up air, so as long as the opponent isn't directly over an engine. The tilt kind of messes with projectile characters, making dealing with zoners even easier. However, the tilt does make Mal timings a little bit inconsistent. Also, the ledge's thinness and tilt also make snapping the ledge a little less inconsistent. And overall, it's one of Shulk's best stages, and I highly recommend going to it and taking full advantage of it. Since everyone seems to hate the stage, you might as well counterpick it since it's a good stage for him. Final Destination can be a very good counterpick stage for Shulk in a lot of situations. Personally, I don't see Shulk as a character who gets a whole lot off of platforms, so their absence isn't really a big issue. However, there is a ton of characters who rely on vertical ascending combos using the platforms, so it's a really good pick to reduce the combos you take, plus you have a lot more freedom on stage because, there's no platforms in your way, so Mal timing and a lot of tech is a lot more consistent. So overall, I would almost always counterpick either this stage or Town and City. Duck Hunt is a stage that allows Shulk to have a lot more freedom in the air. He can easily jump from the tree to the bush, especially in jump, so it'll give characters who rely heavily on getting close or zone breakers a really hard time. And it makes your life pretty easy. If you do manage to get the first talk, you could easily just camp in jump mode and time them out. Not that I recommend that, but I mean, it's an option. However, the offstage areas are quite a bit smaller, so edge guarding is a little bit difficult, just because I feel like by the time I run off and forward air, I'm already in the blast zone for some reason. The blast zones are just really small. And there's the walls, but you know, Shulk doesn't have a wall jump, so he doesn't really get anything off of that. And overall, it's a pretty good stage for him, and it can be a good counter pick if it's not banned. Overall, the best starting stages for Shulk, I would say, are FD and Smashville. If you want a good counter pick, I would opt for something like Town and City or Lylat Cruise. Duck Hunt's an okay stage, and only really promotes complete defensive play, so it's personally not one of my favorites, but it's still a good stage for Shulk. Battlefield and Dreamland are pretty much up to you. I know some Shulk players that are really comfortable on those stages, but I am not one of those people. If you're comfortable on those stages, then go ahead and counterpick them if you want to. I'm just not a fan of those types of stages. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We're actually reaching the end of this series. The next one could potentially be the last one. I'm not exactly sure yet. Next I'll be covering ledge traps and edge guarding, and there could be one more that's kind of like a special finale thing. I haven't really decided yet. But fear not, this is not the end of Shulk content. We're not even close to the end. I have a new series in the works where we'll be covering Shulk's matchup spread, and I think that's going to be really cool. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you all later.